On this episode of Bite Sized, we are watching and discussing the 44th scene of the movie Twilight. For those of you watching along at home, that is from 104:23 to 106:44. A lot of fours in this one. And now, on to the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bite Sized. If this is your first episode, here's what's going on. My name is Ben. I am your host. I'm watching the movie Twilight one scene at a time with a different guest every week. I send someone about 90 seconds of the movie Twilight, and we talk about it with little to no context outside of that. Joining me today is an actor, a podcast host, a writer, also involved with Dusk the Musical. There's been a little theme over these last few episodes. Cosette Bolt, welcome to Bite Sized.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Cosette, I'm going to start this interview the way I start every interview. That is by asking you, what is your history with the Twilight franchise?
Oh my goodness. So I grew up in the American South, and Twilight was was a huge taboo.
Really?
Yeah, so it was a part of the a little bit more traditional conservative side of Tennessee. So I read them in secret. When they came out, I distinctly remember being told to hide them when my grandparents came over. So I'd have to hide them in my closet. So I've read them several times, and I reread them during COVID because I needed a bright spot in the stain that was COVID. And then I had the joy and honor of rereading them again last year in preparation for Dusk.
What was your introduction to the movies? Were you able to watch those in secret, or did that have to wait till adulthood?
So I watched a few of them in the movie theaters, dating myself a little bit, ever so slightly, to some people that I know. But
in stark contrast to last week's episode, Vinny DiPasquale, who said the first movie came out when he was 3 years old. I don't like that guy.
That is a terrifying thing to say.
Anyway,
I remember I bought some of the films after renting an illegal pirated DVD version.
Yeah. What a time capsule.
What a time capsule. Yeah, so I went to an off Blockbuster video. It was not a real Blockbuster video, and I rented it, and it turned out to be a pirated CD version of it. And then I really liked it in my grungy times. And so then I bought it on Apple with a gift card that I got for Christmas one year.
Man, the number of movies that I owned on iTunes. We're going to have to try really hard to stay on topic here.
Oh, yeah.
And not just talk about the movies we owned on iTunes.
Oh, the whole Transformers series?
Oh, yeah. For me, it was my big one was The Princess Bride.
That's my favorite film of all time. I have it memorized.
The day I realized I could have The Princess Bride on my iPod and watch it whenever I want changed my life.
I loved growing up with technology coming in. Oh.
Anyway, Twilight.
Topic. Oh, no.
Has Twilight been something you've been in love with forever? I suppose so, if you've been rereading, or did you ever go away from it?
So there was a good probably 7 years where I just didn't engage with it at all. Yeah. And then when I started my master's a couple years ago, my roommate was like, one evening we were home, we didn't have anything to do, and she goes, do you just want to rewatch Twilight from the beginning together?
What year was this?
So this was 3 years ago now.
Okay.
So
that's an incredibly common experience for my guests on the show, is that they loved it and then stopped, and then COVID happened. COVID is the best thing that ever happened to Twilight.
Oh, absolutely. And so we watched through all of them with new enlightened eyes of the rose tinted glasses are completely off at this point. Yeah. It is not the media that we grew up with, that we loved growing up. It is now the media that we love to hate on. Because my roommate and I, we have MFAs in acting, so we love to come at it from a very analytical standpoint of just where does it all go wrong and what were they thinking?
And yet all goes so right.
It all goes so right. So we rewatched all of them, and then we were in Dusk together, and I auditioned on a whim, and all of a sudden a large part of my early career as a professional actor and writer is involved in Twilight.
Well, let's get into the episode. As much as I would love to continue talking about Dusk and movies that we watched on iPods, we have a lot to get into. This scene we have today is a rich one. The Cullens, Esme and Rosalie and Carlisle and Emmett are making some food for Bella in their kitchen that they've never used before.
What I do, I cut this in strips, and then we're gonna cut this in
Is
dice.
she even Italian?
Her name is Bella. I'm sure she'll love it no matter what.
Now,
They all have their various little tasks. Esme is grating a ton of cheese. Emmett is chopping something that we can't really see. And he's doing a good little acting chop where he's not moving the knife too much, that he's clearly just chopping the same thing over and over again, but it's very quiet, and that's what's most important.
Continuity.
Carlisle is chopping some bacon or pancetta, something like that. Knowing that they are cooking this for one person, they are making entirely too much food. Mm-hmm. And I guess it makes sense if you haven't had to cook for Esme and Emmett over 100 years, for Carlisle much longer than that. I guess you would forget how to scale down a recipe. But you think at some point one of them would stop and say, is this too much? Knowing that only one person is going to be eating it.
Absolutely. My big thing with this is not only are they over preparing the food, but presumably they're going to sit around a table and just watch her consume this absolutely ungodly amount of pasta.
Oh man, of carbonara or whatever they're making. I didn't even think about that aspect of it. How incredible! What a blessing it is that Bella already ate, so she won't have to just be stared at by 6 people watching her eat some pasta that they cannot taste test.
Who also have inhuman hearing. So as she's chewing, as she's swallowing, they can hear everything.
They've got a cooking show on. I dug into this. The cooking show they're watching, it's hosted by a guy named Nick Stellino, and he had a cooking show on Seattle's PBS around this time. So that's an incredible, what detail they went into. Instead of just grabbing some old episode of Emerald or whatever, they found a very specific Pacific Northwest thing.
Now we have one of my favorite recipes. Pork chop with Nancy Bella sauce. In case you don't know what Nancy Bella means Nancy the Beautiful. That's dedicated to my wife. Let me show you exactly what this is about, because I have a few secrets.
I wish they went into that much detail when they were blending out the makeup on Esme's wig and upper forehead area.
Yeah, they were too busy. Apparently those two departments were not in communication about that. They're making Italiano. If you were going to have someone over for dinner for the first time and you had to watch them eat it, what do you think you would make? What's your go-to recipe?
Oh, goodness. Well, as a Southerner, I would probably make like chicken and green beans and biscuits.
Sure, classic.
Which are things that I can't really make here, seeing as I live in the UK. But that would be, like, if I were back in the States, that would be something I would make. Though I really think they were going real hard into the we vampires can consume garlic.
Yeah.
By doing that.
That's another unanswered question that I feel like is sort of hovering over this scene, is that, like, they're making Italian food, which means they have to at some point interact with garlic. So does that mean that garlic doesn't do anything to these vampires? Like, it's just, it's wild to me that you would have vampires making Italian food without ever addressing the garlic question.
Well, I think there is a section in the book where Bella kind of is poking and prodding at Edward to be like, well, can you eat something? And he takes a bite of something. And in the book, he's like, I just have to throw it up later.
Yeah, yikes.
So I think they could interact with garlic. I just think that some retching would be involved.
Yeah. Last little detail I want to touch on is that surrounding their whole area is a bunch of empty boxes that that had knives and pans in them at some point. So once again, the set decoration team went into great detail of showing, these people have never owned cooking implements before.
Art department popped off with that one.
Yeah, y'all get raises for this one. Rosalie's there. She's not making anything. She's just holding a bowl of salad or lettuce, I guess, and wearing some gloves.
She's also wearing a giant necklace.
Yeah. just a very large like cameo or something. I did some research into this as well. Apparently she was wearing gloves because later in the scene she breaks the salad bowl with her bare hands. And she did that so many times that she actually hurt her hands and had to cover up the injuries with the gloves. So it makes sense why the actor is wearing gloves. But for the character of Rosalie to be wearing gloves, like she just is about to get on a motorcycle or something, makes absolutely no sense.
Oh, no.
That's just not thinking through your shooting schedule.
No.
You know, like film that close-up of her breaking the bowl, film that after the big shots, or like have someone else do that so you're not, that little insert that you don't need to have her there for, just, I don't know.
They just had Nikki Reed just standing there the whole time, just like, all right, when do I come in and break this bowl for the 50th time?
You know, they didn't want to pay for a second giant necklace, so she's already in costume, just have her do it, I guess. Bella and Edward walk in. We hear them walking in from another room, and we hear the way they enter this scene. Before we see them, we hear them, and we hear Bella say, "Get away from that." And we do not see what she is, I guess, I assume Edward. She's telling Edward to get away from that. We don't see what it is. It is never remarked upon. And it really leaves the unanswered question of what is Bella telling Edward to get away from?
Hi, Editor Ben here. In the original recording of this podcast episode, there was like 2 minutes where they discussed what it was she might have been telling him to get away from, but I feel like I need to nip this in the bud and say, I'm pretty sure she's saying, get a whiff of that.
Get away from that.
Like, she's referring to the smell from the kitchen. I listened to it a bunch of times. I checked an online transcript. It agreed. It's get a whiff of that, not get away from that. Okay, back to my editing hole.
But eventually they do walk into the kitchen, and Esme, so many names. Why does half the Cullens have E names? Why do Edward and Esme and Emmett have to have the same name? It's inconvenient and a little bit rude for me, the podcast host, I think.
It's like Game of Thrones, where all of a sudden all of the characters have the exact same name.
Seriously.
Twilight did it first, y'all.
Twilight did it first, George.
Stay in your lane, George.
Keep not writing books, George.
Absolutely.
Edward and Bella walk into the kitchen, and Esme immediately gets weird.
Here comes the human.
Bella, we're making Italiano for you.
Oh.
Bella, this is Esme, my mother for all intents and purposes.
Buongiorno.
Molto bene.
She's so awkward in kind of an endearing mom kind of way during this scene. You get the sense that like she's very excited that Edward has brought someone over. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but from the performance, I get that like, oh, this is part of a normal life that Esme always wanted but knew she could never have. And that maybe if she had not been turned into a vampire because she was dying of Spanish flu, she would have had children and, you know, met their significant others for the first time. But because she's doing that now as a 100-years-old vampire, she kind of forgot how to act like a normal person and is being supremely weird about it.
Do you not know Esme's backstory?
I know a little bit.
The fact, that her child died and she killed herself.
Oh, she did?
Yeah, she took her own life jumping off a cliff, and that's how... And she was brought into the same hospital that Edward was being treated for Spanish influenza in, and that's how Carlisle,
Off a cliff, you said?
Yeah.
That makes no sense, because I can tell you, I do know that I'm pretty sure the hospital that Edward was in when he was dying was in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And I am currently in Chicago. And the nearest cliff is probably about 250 miles away. So the idea that she would jump off a cliff, I guess Stephanie Meyer isn't up on her geography is what I'm trying to say here.
No. So I do believe she either miscarried or lost a child. Either way, she lost a child, and she was in so much grief that she took her own life, and was just alive enough when she was brought in for Carlisle to change her.
Well, that's a fun little detail to throw into your young adult novel.
Yeah, absolutely. Written by a Mormon woman.
Yeah, cool fantasy there, Steph. Thanks for that.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for the lore.
Back to the kitchen where fun stuff is happening. They briefly speak in Italian for some unknown reason. Esme says, I hope you're hungry. Bella says she already ate, and this makes Rosalie incredibly mad.
Giving us an excuse to use the kitchen for the first time.
I hope you're hungry.
Yeah, absolutely.
She already ate.
There was zero communication going into this meet and greet. It's clear that Edward told everyone else that he was bringing Bella over. Mm-hmm. But clearly, they never told Edward that they were going to make food. And I guess Edward didn't bother communicating, or maybe even Bella didn't say anything to Edward or anyone else that there was no need to make food. This is going about as wrong as it can possibly go. And if anyone had just texted someone else, it wouldn't have to be like this.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, Edward could have run over and said, hey, she's already eaten, fam, and then yeeted back to Bella in the time it would have taken to send a text.
Yeah.
Or make a phone call in 2006.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways this could have gone better. But Rosalie gets so mad that she crushes the salad bowl she's holding with her bare hands in what may be so far my favorite shot of the movie. She doesn't like slam it down on the ground or on the counter or anything. She doesn't like pull it apart. She just like crushes it like a soda can basically, and it shatters, leaving glass and lettuce all over the floor. And I think that's a little bit of an overreaction.
Absolutely. I also love the absolute confidence with which Bella then rolls her eyes. Her reaction to that is immediately to roll her eyes and look at Edward. And I'm like, this woman just demonstrated what she could do to your neck, and you are rolling your eyes at her.
Perfect. Yeah, it's just because I know that you guys don't eat, so
Of course. It's very considerate of you.
Just ignore Rosalie, I do.
We also see, as we watch the glass and lettuce fall to her feet, we see that Rosalie is wearing some pretty uncomfortable looking high heels at home.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I guess the Cullens, they don't have a shoes off household. I guess you can just wear shoes whenever you want in the house. But I would at least think, Rosalie, you don't have to be wearing those right now. You could be wearing something a little more comfortable.
I briefly recall something from the books of just like, because they don't sleep.
Yeah.
They just kind of stand around.
Okay.
So maybe she just doesn't care.
I guess. And if you don't have to worry about
like fatigue. Yeah.
You have more time to put on complicated outfits and a lot of makeup and stuff like that. Do they shower? This is a question I've never thought about the Cullens before. Do they have to bathe?
So they don't have sweat glands.
No, and they don't have body oils and stuff like that. No, they don't have
body oils. So they don't have to, but in the last film, they do.
I would assume all the running around in the forest like that, you're going to get dirty.
Yes, indeed.
So I guess you got to clean off at maybe less than the average person. If they don't have sweat and stuff like that, they probably don't have a smell. They don't have to worry about body odor.
No, I don't think so.
Or infections or stuff like that. So I guess there's really, other than having some dirt on you, there's no reason for them to ever bathe.
No, there's not. But it also begs the question of, if they don't produce any sort of odor or body hair, how in the world do they have heads of hair on their heads? My guess is wig. They're all wigs.
This is a conversation I've had with a previous guest, and I want to see where you land on it because, obviously at some point they were human, mm-hmm. and so they had that hair, and then they were turned into vampires and still had their human hair, and so then the question is, does their hair keep growing like normal hair, or are they just stuck with whatever haircut they had when they were turned into a vampire, and maybe you can cut it shorter, but it can only go so far? Is that how? Did Alice have longer hair and she just kept going and going and going up until she was stuck with her little pixie cut, and that's all she has now because it can't get any longer?
So my theory about Alice's hair is that she was in a sanatorium.
Okay.
And they shaved her head when she went in, and she grew her hair out to that point before she was turned.
Okay.
So that's my thought. Everyone else, I think,
yeah.
If you cut your hair, you're just kind of shit out of luck. You don't have more.
No, you have to choose a hairstyle that's gonna be, if not in fashion, then at least won't stand out for several decades, and that's hard to do.
Yeah, and then what about the other vampires who come in later who have beards and mustaches?
they had beards and mustaches when they were turned is the only explanation there.
But you're stuck with either having facial hair for the rest of your life or shaving it off and never having it again.
Speaking as a bearded man, I grew out my facial hair almost 10 years ago and kind of immediately decided that I will have this for the rest of my life. So once you find a style that works, you can keep it, I guess. Another question I have is the vampires, their skin and stuff like that is super hard and can't get scratched. So is their hair the same thing? Do they have to like chisel? Can normal scissors cut your hair when you're a vampire? These are questions that Twilight the movie refuses to answer.
Honestly, that's kind of my thought. It's just like it's like protected, the rest of them is protected. So maybe their hair is just like, if it was fine, now it's like ultra coarse kind of deal.
I guess. Yeah. That's gotta suck. That's gotta be there. And that also means that somewhere in the oh man, now I'm thinking about the other vampires and their weird haircuts. I need to stop this. I'm getting too far away. But that means that somewhere back in the Volturi Castle or whatever is some vampire who has specialized in vampire cosmetology and styling other vampire hair. There has to be some sort of specialist there. I don't know.
New lore just dropped. New lore has entered the conversation.
Stephanie Meyer, there are so many consequences to your story here that you did not even consider, and I'm forced to fill in your gaps.
We, the adoring public, need to know.
Oh, the implications, Stephanie.
Yeah. Let's just keep pretending like this isn't dangerous for all of us. I would never tell anybody anything.
She knows that.
Yeah, well, the problem is you two have gone public now, so...
No, she should know. The entire family will be implicated if this ends badly. Badly, as in...
I would become the meal.
And they all have a fun, awkward chuckle. And then Alice and Jasper enter the scene in the strangest way. They walk out of a tree that I guess is growing over like their porch or something. But it looks for all the world like they have just this open kitchen and there is a tree growing into the kitchen so they can walk in and out on a tree branch. It makes no sense.
We never see this tree again.
Do we not?
No, this tree is just in this scene.
Okay.
In future films, we never again witness this tree branch growing through the kitchen.
Yeah. And like you can like there is one shot where it sort of looks like it's a little farther in the back, but it really is just so it is growing into their house in an almost dangerous way that I guess would only make sense for vampires who can climb the tree straight into the living room after they've been hunting or whatever.
Yeah, like somebody accidentally opened a window like 45 years ago and oops, now there's a tree in our house.
So where were Alice and Jasper during all this? Why weren't they helping cook and get ready?
I think from the book, I think they were upstairs and Edward wanted Jasper to get a smell of Bella before coming downstairs to interact to make sure that he could control himself.
Okay.
I think that's what I remember.
Well then...
Because like the next little bit is like, don't worry, you won't hurt her.
And that would also explain why Alice, upon officially meeting Bella for the first time, says, oh yeah, you do smell good, which is a strange thing to say to someone, especially someone who's sort of entering this family as, you know, one of your siblings' significant other. I don't know. I wouldn't say that to my brother's girlfriend.
Hi, Bella. I'm Alice.
Hey.
Hi. Oh, you do smell good.
Alice, what are you...
It's okay. Bella and I are going to be great friends.
Sorry, Jasper's our newest vegetarian. It's a little difficult for him.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
It's okay, Jasper. You won't hurt her.
Maybe she was like trying to play into like, oh, this is how girls talk to one another.
I guess. And well, and then my thought was like, my first thought was, oh, she smells the blood. But then, like, she would smell like every other human, I guess, except now that I think about it, Edward's whole first attraction to her in the biology room with the great big fan was her smelling him, which can only mean that Edward went back home and said, guys, I met this girl. She smells amazing.
Uh-huh. Smells so good that he can't control himself, and then he runs off to Alaska.
Yeah.
For several days.
Right.
To hunt, so that he can be around her without snapping her neck in front of the other children.
And then I guess Alice remembered this and was like, yeah, she does smell even better than other humans.
She does
which is such a...
indeed smell like your own personal brand of heroin.
Yeah. Is it ever established? You seem to know a lot more about the books than I do, which is to say anything about the books. Is it ever established what exactly about her smells different or better? Because it sort of seems like, I don't know, if it was like something she was wearing, like a scent or something, anyone could do that. But it makes it seem like there is something special about her and the way that she smells innately and biologically, which is maybe the weirdest character trait you could give your fictional protagonist.
So there's like an ongoing theory that they're in a fated mate situation because all of the other characters talk about how their partner smelled like absolutely incredible when they were human, and if they didn't turn them, they would kill them.
Sure.
So I think him having that kind of attraction to her with the smell thing is like oh, this person is the person I'm supposed to be with forever, but it's done in such a weird and slightly predatory way. Or not slightly, it's overtly predatory.
Right.
I think they're playing on the whole, like, pheromone conversation. Right. Just like, oh, this person smells so good because we're genetically compatible.
And also, like, the danger of, like, these vampires are predators, and wild animals like wolves and stuff rely a lot more on their sense of smell than we do. I don't know. It's weird.
It's really weird. Thanks, Steph. We have more questions.
Yeah, and that we're never going to get answers to.
Nope.
And that's probably for the best.
Oh, yeah.
Let's start to wrap this up. Cosette, if you had to give this scene a name, what would it be? And this is also going to be the name of the episode, so make it good.
Oh, Dinner with Devils.
Dinner with Devils. It's short. It's alliterative. I love it. It tells me everything I need to know. I'm a big fan of that episode title. Very nice. Cosette Bolt, if people like the sound of your voice and maybe want to follow you on social media or see you in a play sometime soon, or listen to a podcast that you host and is also about Twilight, where can they do those kind of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow me on Instagram at Cosette Bolt. You can look at my professional website, which is cosettebolt.net. You can listen to my podcast, Dusk, a two-lit podcast, on Spotify, as well as any other platform that you listen to podcasts. We also have the video versions of the shows on YouTube from Wishbone Medias. I'm also Aura/Alice in Dusk at the Edinburgh Fringe over the next month. So yeah, check it out.
If you want to follow the show on social media, you can do so at bitesizedpod_ on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. See some clips of the shows with pictures involved. Ooh, not just an audio medium. You can also send an email to the show to my favorite Twilight Podcast at gmail.com. Apologies to anyone else who hosts a Twilight Podcast. I got that email address and now it sounds arrogant, but here we are. All that information and more, including information on how to buy a sticker of the show's logo, can be found at twilightpodcast.com. Thank you to my editor, Ben Oxher, for putting this show together. Thank you to the band Swimwear Department for letting me use their song Mauled to Death as our theme. Thank you to Kellen Lutz for one day stumbling upon this podcast, somehow listening to it, and reaching out to me, telling me how much you want to be on the show. It's going to happen. I just know it. That is it. That is all we have for this episode of Bite Sized. As we always say at the end of every episode,
oh no, have fun. Live,
no, have fun.
Live, laugh, love Stephanie Meyer.
Yeah, that's what we say, all those things. See you next time.
pay for that?